This is the story of how our adventure in Peru aboard the Villa Vie Odyssey nearly ended before it ever began.
Absolutely. We had some crazy weather hit the Peruvian coast. People lost their lives, there was devastation, and all ports were closed. So you can imagine, we thought our planned trip to Chan Chan and the Temple of the Sun and Moon was officially over, or so we thought. Check out this video.
We were definitely worried about this weather. I mean, we had weeks of anticipation and planning that was at risk for us because we had learned about these really incredible archaeological sites that we really wanted to visit. But the ship was rocking, and I mean figuratively and literally.
Yeah, but then miraculously, we got the green light. So we got to go on shore, and the first thing we saw, of course, was the resilience of these communities. They come together, they were, doing their normal kind of things as we got on shore. And we were able to go visit Chan Chan, one of the most incredible archaeological sites really in South America, and most of it is still intact. So it's super cool to see. I couldn't believe we hadn't really heard of this until we came to this part of the world.
Exploring those ancient ruins of Chan Chan, you really got a sense of the history and of the incredible civilizations that lived there before we ever got to visit the place. And then on top of Chan Chan, we also got to see the temples of the Sun and Moon, which were incredible archaeological sites. I mean, walking beside these buildings and inside these buildings, you really got a sense that you were stepping back in time.
You really did. And of course, this whole experience kind of told us, when things look bleak, just persevere. Obviously, other folks had it tougher, but we were really glad that we got this experience, and we were really thankful that we had a captain and crew that kept us safe during these storms.
Thanks to the captain and crew, we were actually able to continue exploring. So join us as we share our Peruvian adventure aboard the Villa Vie Odyssey, from the initial uncertainty to the breathtaking beauty of the city of Chan Chan and the Huacas del Sol and Luna, otherwise known as the temples of the Sun and Moon.
So as we mentioned, the weather was crazy. We're not talking about just rain here. We're talking about huge swells that were beating the coast. And of course, that means 90 ports were actually closed in Peru, which is crazy. And Salaverry, our intended port, was right in the thick of it.
It was a really tense time on the ship, and we weren't just disappointed that we were going to possibly miss this port and the archaeological sites that we wanted to see. We were also worried that we were going to miss the next port being the port of Lima, the capital city. We had some really big plans there that we really wanted to explore the city and have a great time there, but it looked like they were going to close that port as well. So there was like this domino effect of one port closing in Peru after another.
Of course, it wasn't just about our sightseeing plans. There were people that were in a lot different and worse shape than we were, because there was folks on the ship that intended to leave on planes leaving out of Lima. So when they weren't sure they were going to be able to get off the ship in Lima, that would really throw a wrench in their plans. Likewise, there were people that were joining the ship, brand new residents that had flown to Lima to get on the ship, and if we weren't going to stop in Lima, they weren't going to be able to get on. So can you imagine being in a foreign country, you've flown into Lima, you're all excited, and now you can't get on the ship because we're not sure we can stop there. This was a lot of confusion, and like we said, a lot of folks had it worse than we did, and this confusion was kind of building on itself.
It was a really stressful situation for everyone, and what made it worse was the uncertainty. I mean, we would get this announcement over the intercom that the next port was closed, but then like a hour later, there'd be another announcement that the port was open again. So there was this constant roller coaster, and we never knew exactly what was going to happen. So it started to make everybody really tense and just not knowing what was going to happen next.
Yeah, the uncertainty was crazy. Of course, It was a really fluid situation because it was absolutely not in our control and they were reacting to what was out there. The captain and the crew were doing everything they could to keep us updated. I think they did a great job, but they were getting things that were changing minute by minute. So they kept telling us what they knew when they knew it, and we all kind of knew that was continuing to change. So you can imagine after all of this, we were clearly not sure what was going to happen, and we were just kind of rolling with the punches. It really kind of reminds you that when it comes to Mother Nature, you're not in control. So on a residential cruise ship, you got to kind of roll with it, and that's what we had to do.
It definitely put things into perspective. We were all so relieved when we finally got the green light to dock in Salaverry. And when we finally put our feet on solid ground, we were so happy. And certainly for those who had to take a flight out and those who were joining us for the first time, that meant everything for them. For us, though, it was the start of a day of great adventure.
Fortunately, we got to come to Salaverry here in Peru. This is our first time to Peru, so we're really excited. Our friends Don and Doris are with us, and we had to take a bus that took us from the ship to kind of this place outside the port. And then we were lucky enough to find our friend Eddie today, who has taken us around all day and going to help us explore this area. Don's been doing some research, and we figured out that having a taxi is absolutely the right way to go. So we're looking forward to exploring today.
We've been traveling on the Odyssey for quite a while now. We've spent a lot of time in the Caribbean and just a little bit in South America, like Ecuador. But we've never been more excited as we are right now, because we are in Peru, and it is a gorgeous, gorgeous place.
Yeah, it's really cool to finally be somewhere we've not been many times before, and we're near Trujillo, Peru now, and it's such a cool place. We're seeing, of course, all the countryside. You see what's behind us here. We're going exploring today, and it is so different from anything we've experienced, so it's really getting to us that we're exploring Peru on the Odyssey, and that rocks.
So after all of the drama with the weather, we finally made it to the Huacas del Sol and La Luna, otherwise known as the temples of the sun and moon. And boy, it did not disappoint. And when we got there, we hired a local guide, which was actually a requirement because it's really an active archaeological dig, so you need someone to accompany you as you go through the site. And they helped unpack all of the history we found there.
They really did. Having the guide brought the stories to life. And like he said, it was required, but we were really glad that we got it because you just see and hear things that you wouldn't get otherwise. Also, it's a huge place, so navigating it's tough. And it's an active archaeological site, so they don't want you just wandering around. The other thing is they're constantly exploring this thing, so our understanding of this culture is constantly evolving. And you know, they said, hey, when you come back here a while from now, we may tell you different stories because this is what we know today, but we're learning more and more every day. The really cool thing was, though, that it was against this Peruvian landscape, which was really unlike anything we had ever seen. It was almost kind of otherworldly, alien-like. So you had all of this history and architecture and this great experience all juxtaposed against this really cool landscape. It was a great, great day.
One of the most striking things that we saw among the ruins was all of this intricate artwork. We're talking about some very detailed carvings and some paintings, and these would show like their deities and scenes from their mythology. And some of these paintings were like really vibrant, and it was amazing to think that it actually was created centuries ago.
Yeah, it's crazy. You could really tell from their artistry how important symbolism was. And the guide explained to us that their world was pretty much revolving around making sure they had enough rain and prevented from natural disasters. So a lot of their religion focused in that area, and of course you can see that through the artwork. They had to spend a lot of time, and they spent a lot of energy and even a few sacrifices making sure they had enough rain, not too much rain, and not earthquakes and all those other things that they were scared of. So that all came to life through the things that we saw on the site.
And unfortunately, part of their religion involved human sacrifice. I mean, it's a tragic part of their history, but it's important to acknowledge it. I mean, it gives us a deeper understanding of how they saw the world and the kind of challenges they faced. I mean, it was a very different time.
It was, but even with all of that darkness, which is clearly there, and you hear the stories about it, you see the artistry and you see the ingenuity and all the things that they also did reflected in the temples. They were so close to nature and aligned with it. So it really gives you an appreciation for all the facets of their culture, and it really reminds you about kind of the rise and the fall of civilizations.
We have been touring the temples of the sun and moon, and it's been fascinating. And we had a wonderful tour guide. What was her name?
Rosemary.
Rosemary. She was terrific. She told us all about the history of this amazing place. It's not just one temple. There are different levels of temples. One temple built after another on top of
so
another.
cool. She told us how as new governments would come in, and it was usually the son of the previous one, they built up and out. So these temples kind of cluster like Russian dolls or something. They just kept building up and bigger and out on top of each other.
And they would put these frescoes-like things, these paintings on top of the wall, on the walls of each of the successive temples, and they're amazing. And they are still maintaining the colors that was used originally. None of these have been
None of them have been
restored.
restored. None have been restored, and there's not a lot of money here. They have no support from the government. They're doing ticket sales and they're doing other things, and of course private donations. Unlike a lot of places, this is not a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but it made it really interesting. There was not that many people here. We were able to get all the way through it, and this was a real treat. So far, Peru is delivering for us.
After visiting the temples of the sun and moon, you would think that nothing can top that. Well, you haven't seen anything yet. Take a look at our trip to the mysterious and monumental city of Chan Chan. We have made it to the main spot that we wanted to see in this part of Peru. It's actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and you can see why. We're at the magnificent city of Chan Chan.
This has been such a cool experience. This thing is huge, and what's here is only like a quarter of what it used to be. There used to be like 60,000 people here 900 years ago, and you can see these remnants of this city, and some of it's incredibly well preserved.
Yeah, especially the walls. The walls are huge that guard the city, and then the palaces are made with these huge giant walls that are meters thick.
So interesting, and our guide's been wonderful. We're hearing all the stories. This is definitely one of those places, I think, where you don't come and just look at it because you may not get the whole vibe. The guides really helped, and we're learning so much today. This was special. This was super cool. It's really incredible to think this was once this thriving, huge metropolis and this center of civilization and power. It actually predated the Inca civilization, but was ultimately conquered by the Incas. It's a huge place. As far as the eye can see, you see residences and businesses and temples and all these other things. And there's still more to be discovered because some of it's still under the sand.
And what's really unique is that we got to experience this as part of a cruise. I mean, how often do you get to visit such a remote and historically significant place via a cruise ship? It's not your typical cruise excursion, that's for sure. We thought that we should take a moment to mention how the Villa Vie Odyssey kind of made this possible. It would have been so difficult to do this otherwise, because we're in Salaverry, Peru, a very small port, and then we went from there to get to all of these amazing temples. There are not many cruise lines that will take you to the port of Salaverry, Peru.
No, I'd never heard of Salaverry, actually. And so, this is exactly the kind of thing we were hoping to accomplish when we got on Villa Vie. First of all, we're here for a while. We actually don't have to rush back because we're here overnight, but we're in this tiny port. We're going to these amazing temples that are kind of off the beaten path, and that's hidden gems. That's what we really live for. We seek them out, and so far, this one's been amazing.
It really was an incredible opportunity, and one that we won't forget. And to think it almost didn't happen. Remember, we had the weather, we had the port closures, we had all this uncertainty, and we didn't know if this thing was going to happen. As a matter of fact, we were kind of talking about all that uncertainty while we were at Chan Chan, and thinking about not everybody is so understanding when stuff like this happens.
So there are a lot of haters out there who often talk about how Villa Vie sometimes change ports on us, and it causes chaos, and it's a horrible thing. But there are often really, really valid reasons why this happened. And one of those reasons almost happened here in Salaverry.
Yeah, now we understand that things that are farther out are different, but you do hear a lot of this. And today we were told repeatedly days ago that this might not happen because there was basically tsunamis down here. And they were concerned about pulling into port and the waves being so bad that we actually couldn't stay in port or come in at all. Fortunately, when we got here, this all worked out. So today this actually happened. Now, that could have been a bad story. Maybe that wouldn't have happened and we wouldn't have been here. It would not have been a hater story. It would have just been we had tsunamis. So we clearly indicate that there are things that could always get better, and they will. But this is one of those where the haters need to stop hating a little bit.
It really does make this experience even more special. I mean, when we think about how close we came to missing out on it, it makes us appreciate it even more.
It really was an incredible experience, and one we're going to always remember. The trip to the Huacas and the trip to Chan Chan really is the kind of hidden gem experience that we love to explore, and it's going to be a great memory for us. We've got an upcoming exploration of Lima, an urban city in Peru, so make sure that you set your notification button, and we'll see you then.